Welcome back to Plug and Play EV. I'm Steve, and in this one we'll be looking at the IONIQ 6 versus our IONIQ 5, the daily driver. What's the difference between these Hyundai siblings on the EGMP platform, and would we swap if we had a choice? Let's get into it.
So impressions of driving the Hyundai IONIQ 6 SEL over about 250-300 miles or so around Massachusetts.
In terms of driving dynamics, definitely feel a little more connected to this one than the IONIQ 5. You have, obviously we've got 80,000 miles on our IONIQ 5 now, so that's had a longer time to be on the road and develop looser steering and whatever else you might expect over that time period. This is only 20,000 miles in, so it does have some advantage there, but it feels a little more connected to the road. Although you're not feeling like you're sat way down, you do feel a little more nimble, responsive when you're turning through corners. So there's definitely an advantage to the sedan shape of being a bit lower down there. Felt nice through some of the kind of back roads of Massachusetts. Had I been in our IONIQ 5, it would have felt a bit more body roll around the corners, a little bit more floaty. This has a more planted feel. Not so much so that I would say this is as nimble and kind of dart-like as a Model 3 or a Model Y. I've always described those, at least the ones I've driven, as feeling they're on rails. You really get the speed immediately as you put it down, and it kind of feels like it's a bit of a rocket ship. This feels the same in terms of the speed and acceleration. You definitely get that performance with the around a 5-second 0 to 60 time in this all-wheel drive version. You feel a little more go-kart-like, I guess, in the Model 3s that I've been in, at least. You'd have to test drive to see which version you prefer, but definitely comparing to the IONIQ 5, this is more of the driver's car, I think, as you would expect from the form factor and the segment, but you don't actually give up as much space as I thought you might. Okay, so one of the big pieces about the IONIQ 5 that we had was that it was an upgrade over the Bolt EV, certainly, for space and trunk space. So let's see how much of this stuff in the kind of SUV shape of the IONIQ 5 will fit into the trunk of the much more sedan trunk in the IONIQ 6. Got a bunch of soccer stuff here. Usually have a big bag of soccer balls, all the coaching stuff, cleats, training, extra bits and pieces. Bit of a mess, but throws back there, no problem. I do like this little button push. Integrates nicely with the design. To open up. So there is a lot of space back there, and it's a decent size opening, but obviously you've got the height restriction. That's where the hatchback comes into its own. Let's see, start with the biggest object that would just throw in there, no problem at all. Eats it up, a lot of space. Now let's try just some of the extra holdalls. Stows quite nicely to the back, it still has some space up top. This extra one. Again, squeezes in quite nicely with plenty of space. And you've got a couple of seats here for spectator stuff. That's one. That's two. So, actually not bad at all. I mean, that stuff wasn't very well packed in here. Did use a bunch of stuff. Let's say we're winter here, so we can throw a blanket in as well. You're not going to have much room for much else, but that is not a problem. And you do have, even if that's what you have it in regularly, you could easily have some groceries on top of there for a week, small family. Push button close, and no problem at all. But the false floor would be a bit more space, but that's actually pretty impressive. That swallowed a bunch, and really the only thing you're losing here is that height. So, although it does have a decent size opening, it feels bigger than the Model 3 from what I recall, but we'll have a look. There's a lot more room for something like a bike is going to be okay here. You're not going to do that in the IONIQ 6. That's one of the use cases we have. And then the other piece is the camping. We can lay these flat, much higher roof up there, and then you have, because this is the limited edition, the big open pano roof. So our car camping experience in this is pretty nice. We've done that in the summer and do more videos on that soon. But that's not going to happen in this. You may get the leg space when you push that down, but this isn't designed for that kind of activity, so you would lose that, and that is something we like to do. But it swallowed all that pretty nicely. The lip is surprisingly big enough to get a bunch of that stuff in. While we're here, although I think it's pretty similar to the IONIQ 5, let's pop the trunk or front. Just the usual switch there. Oh, it lacks the top. I'd say this is actually a bit less space, only a tiny bit, than the IONIQ 5, but you lack the lid, but everything else is in the same place. I think you've got washer there, coolant, and battery, 12 volt over here, and access points there with the lift off cover. So still branded, still got some tactile material there to keep things in place. Same down here. Yeah, just a bit less space. There's no real side false floor where we store a bunch of stuff. You do have this extra kit space where he's got the tire mobility kit and maybe tire pressure, stuff like that. So a bunch of stuff down here, but a bit less space here as well. But certainly very deep, goes a long way back. Reach my arm all the way back to touch the seats there, so got that as well. Good stuff.
So inside the cabin, very spacious up front. I really don't notice that much of a change, at least in the terms of position. You're a little bit lower down, but not so much that you'd notice from the IONIQ 5. Got plenty of headroom here, solid fist above me, 6'2", and I can lift the seat all the way up. I may start to get a little bit close to the roof here. So you can go pretty high in this. This obviously isn't ideal for me, but someone who's a little bit lower, shorter, would then have the similar kind of position I've got in my normal position. So plenty of headroom up front, no complaints at all. Kids had been in the back, they enjoyed that, said it was as spacious as the IONIQ 5. So really very spacious for a sedan, and having been in a Model 3 with at least a 2018 early Model 3, I haven't tried the Highland edition, but having been in that with 5 people, even the kids being younger, definitely felt a bit cramped. I don't think this would be the case in this one, and compares quite well actually, surprisingly, for a sedan shape to the IONIQ 5, which is going for that, although not really an SUV, certainly classifying itself as an SUV and trying to fill that gap. So I have enjoyed driving it through those back roads. It did feel good. All of the same kind of software, really, a few different things in terms of the menu items, but it's just a slightly more new version of the software that we're used to in the IONIQ 5. I do like the layout here a little more. As I said, the bevels don't look quite so intrusive. It looks a bit more modern. This outside kind of edge here gives it a little more finished off rather than a floating kind of feel that the IONIQ 5 has. So definitely a fan of that. Could be curved in a little more perhaps to give it that final driver piece like the EV6 has, but those are minor quibbles. Did say, as I said, I don't really like the window side mirror buttons being over there. That's not somewhere I would go to get it, and this is a little more minimalist as a result, so you do get less opportunity to press buttons by accident, but this is a nice feeling piece of unit. I haven't really rested my hands too much there, but it's about right. And then you have just buttons in a place I wouldn't really want them down there for the ones that I would do fairly often, because people change your mirrors. If you've got more than one driver, you'll know that, and keep on having to futz with them is fine if they're there, but if they're down in the bottom corner, it's a bit less accessible, certainly on the go. This piece right here, do like the illuminated pixels. That's just a nice little touch, nothing that you would pay more for, but certainly pleasant. And the ambient lights, again, I like them in both cars for different reasons, so not really any advantage or disadvantage there, just a nice application of that, and the inclusion of it on the steering wheel is another nice little touch. Visibility perhaps a bit less, but that's really just again down to the shape and the form factor. You maybe don't get so much vision out of this side as you do with a larger windscreen in the IONIQ 5. Really not much difference out the back. That's about the same as we get in the IONIQ 5, so no complaints there. So yeah, pretty impressed actually. Overall, just being in the IONIQ 6, you know, thinking that it may be a little more low slung, not expecting to really, you know, want to upgrade versus an IONIQ 5. It's given me some food for thought. Hopping into the back here, just go over again the points of how much space you'll get. I immediately feel, let me just flip it around here.
You can feel the headroom going down a little bit. You know, I'm a bit more conscious of the roof line there. It's not really big enough for me to put a fist between my head. I have to duck down. So you definitely get that. There's that piece to it. But in terms of leg space, very good. You know, that seat up there is probably a bit further back than I would have it, but my knees are nowhere near. You've got the extra stuff that the owner has put through for the Uber lift passengers, but even with that extruding out a little bit, there's plenty here for leg room. And then you've got the middle. The LED lights are an addition aftermarket, so ignore those. This actually is an addition too, so you've got a bit lower down there, but vents, USB-C, little nook down there for a phone or some kind of small item. Same in the doors, quite like these little cubbies for a phone. There's a bit less space here for things to get lost down, which actually in the IONIQ 5 is a bit annoying because they're quite long, things rattle around, and if the kids have left a pencil or something down there, it'll rattle around, and I guess this could still happen here, but it's a little more visible. Buttons for the rear seats, as you'd expect. Door handles are fine, materials pretty nice. This is cushioned a little bit, just enough to kind of give you a little more padding. This is a little glossy, that might attract scratches perhaps, but overall, yeah, pretty nice. It's hard to tell for me perhaps with the seat covers on here exactly what we're getting underneath, but feels very similar to the IONIQ 5's materials. One at the top there for more like a phone, and then one down here which may, in a pinch, fit a small tablet, maybe an iPad mini. But pretty impressed actually, other than the headroom, which is, you know, something you'd have to figure out depending on the size of your rear seat passengers and how often that happens. It's pretty good. It's definitely going to fit 3 kids back here, no problem at all. An adult, maybe one adult, would be ideal because you could have them in the middle laying back and then the kids on either side. But either way, 5 people could road trip in this relatively comfortably, I think. Obvious difference, which is more on the trim level than anything else, of the panoramic view roof in the IONIQ 5. We're a big fan of that because it opens up the cabin, gives us something to look at, whether we're camping or just having the kids back here to look up into the sky on a sunny day. There's a slight indent there, so you can kind of lean to the side a little bit, gives you a bit more headroom. They're trying to do what they can, but obviously just with the sloping roof, trying to make it that little bit more aerodynamic and having this form factor. That's how the headroom kind of lacks, and that's where you lose that advantage of the IONIQ 5. So that's a wrap for the review of the Hyundai IONIQ 6 SEL edition. What do you think? Is this an EV that has appealed to you or that has been on your shopping list? How would you compare it to something like the Tesla Model 3? And perhaps even the Hyundai IONIQ 5 or Kia EV6. Where does this fit in the EV sales lineup as we head into 2025? There's also the N version of this coming, so that certainly could put another compelling piece in the IONIQ roster. But let us know what you think down in the comments. Do you have one of these in your driveway? Would you consider one? And what do you think of the Hyundai Group's EV offerings as a whole? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching as always, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.